Good morning. It's February 1st, 2017. We're time-stamping it so you have some reference for what it is that we're talking about today. This is Talking Point Live. We'd like to welcome you to our show. We're coming to you live from the campus of Dixie State University in the lobby area of the Holland Building. If you ever get a chance, you want to come down and watch the show live, not that there's really anything to watch, but, or even better, chances are you've already joined us on Facebook. If you're watching what's going on, I'm monitoring our posts here, so if you want to join a conversation, I'd love to have you go through and do that. We're also live on YouTube today at the Community Education Channel's YouTube page. So if you get a chance to go through and take a look there, you're more than welcome. And then, of course, the show is rebroadcast on the Community Education Channel. My name is Eric Young. I'm here with my friend and colleague. And
Jennifer Kohler.
Oh, wow, that's good.
That was a mouthful you just did.
Yes. And so today we're post a number of things. Mm-hmm. It's amazing what transpires in a week these days with our current administration.
Yep.
The ban, the travel, what they're calling the travel ban. Uh-huh. The new appointment of a Supreme Court justice just
the new
yesterday.
Nomination, right?
Nomination, not
yeah.
appointment. Yeah,
yeah.
Sorry. Thank you for
yeah.
keeping me corrected that way.
Okay.
And you want to talk about?
I want to talk about media bias a little bit,
okay.
And what to do with all of this angst and energy that a lot of us are experiencing right now.
Wearing me out.
Yeah, well, it's wearing a lot of people out, and I was surprised last night to be on the phone with one of my neighbors who was expressing his anger and frustration and how upset he was when, and he's a Trump supporter, and he said, I can't believe, how ridiculous and difficult the Democrats are being. They're refusing to even have a hearing or entertain Trump's new nominee for the Supreme Court before they even know the guy's name. And they're just being, difficult. I'm so upset. And I thought to myself, is there anybody right now who's not upset?
So the trolls' response to that would be what?
Oh, the trolls' response?
Right.
Well, they would make a meme about all of that.
Certainly,
okay.
They would go through.
Right.
But basically, what I'm seeing
yes.
on just about every type of political conflict on social media is, well, back during the Obama administration, what did Mitch McConnell do to go through and block not just the idea of appointing Merrick Garland to the Supreme Court, but anything that President Obama was going to do over the course of his administration for both terms.
Right.
The idea was, well, we're going to go through. So now that the tables have turned on that, and well, we have Neil, what's Neil's last name? Gorsuch.
Okay.
Gorsuch?
Okay.
I'll go Gorsuch.
Okay.
To cover my bases
okay.
on both sides. Now that he is the nominee for that, now the Democrats are coming back and saying, well, no, we're going to give you back what you gave to us last term, last go around.
Right.
There's this
tit for tat, two wrongs make a right theory.
Yeah.
Or, like you suggested earlier, maybe somebody takes the high road once in a while.
Okay, so that's what I want to get into, I guess, a little bit with you.
Okay.
I might have hijacked your media bias
No, it's okay.
concept, but we'll come back to that as we go along. Because I am tired, and not that is an excuse for anything in terms of how we go through and look at things.
Okay.
But I have to say this morning, as I listened to the coverage on this, I went, what little I know about Neil Gorsuch is that he is basically a Scalia clone. Mm-hmm. Not a clown, but a Scalia clone. And there was, as much as liberals don't want to admit to it, there was a balance that Justice Scalia brought to the Supreme Court, especially in terms of contemplating or being critical about the intent of the verbiage of the Constitution. And Gorsuch brings to this, at least he brings a legal background, a critical background. Unlike our Commander-in-Chief, he brings in something that gives me a little bit of hope that while liberals are going to be disappointed in terms of what's going to happen with the balance of the Supreme Court, Roe v. Wade's going to be brought into the limelight again and criticized and try to be overturned, those kinds of things. But at the very least, we have somebody there who is capable, from what I've been able to gather so far on that line. So I have to resist this knee-jerk, whoever Trump goes through.
This automatic negation of any suggestions. Right.
But that's where we've gotten to. Okay. And I mean we collectively or diametrically, we still we've been reduced down to that automatic attitudinal default of, well, if Trump did it, it's got to be bad
Or good.
or good, or either way. Yeah.
Okay, well, I just wanted to ask you, when you were listening this morning to the news, what venue was it?
It was NPR.
NPR. Okay.
That's always going to be the answer.
Okay. Well, okay, so
Because look on your sheet right here.
yeah, right here. I brought a big copy.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll have camera 2 zoom in on this if
Okay.
you can. There, he's going to go through.
Yeah.
This is a. Well, go ahead and explain it.
Well, yeah,
while I hold
her
it.
name is Vanessa Otero, and I think she works for Market Watch or some organization. But she put together a chart
She's also an attorney.
describing media bias. And thanks for wiggling that around. It's really helpful.
I'm trying to make it level, but my dyslexia is
And
going
so
the opposite direction.
I've been using it in my classes, and on the y-axis going up, it has various levels over there on the far side. Yeah, it has various levels. There you go.
There.
Of
So that
credibility.
says-
That's the credibility
Okay.
rating. Like at the
Okay.
very bottom, what does it say down at the bottom? It's like
Sensational or
okay.
does that say childish? Oh, clickbait. Right.
Clickbait. Okay, good.
Okay.
And then basic AF above that, which if you don't know what it means, ask a teenager.
Basic. You
Yeah.
worked that into the show.
I had to have my students explain that term to me. Okay, above basic AF we have another category. But anyway, at the very top you come to complex and analytical news coverage. And then if you're going across the bottom of that on the x-axis, it starts on the far left, of course, being the far left point of view. And as you get towards the center of that line, you come to more neutral, hopefully more objective, less biased news coverage. And if you keep going off to the right, now you hit to the far right. Now you said you had gone through some of
I
these,
did. I went
and
through
tell me how you feel Otero did as far as being accurate with her assessment of bias here.
What's interesting, I had to go to Vanessa Otero, the source, first
Okay.
off,
Okay.
and see maybe what some of her inherent biases might be
Okay.
as she then goes through and tries to be objective in putting up these news sources
Okay.
and look at their
Because
biases.
Truth Report said that her analysis was very biased.
Yes,
Okay.
it did.
Okay.
But Truth Report also has a tendency to be right-wing
Okay.
bias as well.
Okay.
So,
All right. Okay.
pot kettle, who knows? She's a patent attorney.
Okay.
She's young. She's critical. She's skeptical within that. I like that, and I happen to probably share the same bias as she does in terms of a little on the liberal leaning side of things, but still being somewhat progressive there. So I think the chart makes perfect sense, honestly. And she has some blue area there that
It
goes
says-
through and indicates that there could be some kind of a shift that might happen
Yes.
on both sides.
Well, for example, like Fox News has a big blue area, and it basically says it confirms your existing biases. It won't help convincing others. Be careful how much you hang out here. And that goes the same for Huffington Post and some of these other sources on the left-leaning side. So what I think is interesting is that, for example, Fox News, there's a lot of different programs on
Well-
Fox News, right? So there may be some variation between point of view, and that's maybe why it.
The programs themselves, really, though, on Fox News have a tendency to be more for the sake of entertainment than they do for news, honestly. However, so you have folks like Shep Smith, who seems to go through. He's the reason why that blue balloon goes back to center. He is their conscientious objector, it seems, on especially on social issues that they're talking about, and keeps the others, the Bill O'Reillys, kind of balances that out a little bit. So we see that move going back and forth. MSNBC kind of does the same thing as well. I don't watch it that much, so I really couldn't tell you who that balancer is. But it's interesting that, and I think it's insightful that she has that that scale. This is what we're talking about here, are these how it leans from left over to center
center,
or right over.
To center.
Again, my dyslexia. This
Yeah.
is left, that's right, as we
Yeah.
go along. So I think there's a lot of merit to that in terms of context of the story, in terms of the intended audience as well. What is it? Fox, the reason why they're where they're at in terms of the ratings is they take into consideration their audience.
Okay. Now, also you made the point, and I've actually got a student researching this question, that Fox does not position itself as a news organization, but as news commentary.
News commentary.
And then I also read an article that said they position themselves as entertainment. So I'm looking for an official Fox statement regarding how they position themselves in the media market. Because if they, and I know repeatedly I've heard statements that we are providing the other point of view, meaning they're not being attempting to portray themselves as objective.
As objective.
But they want to portray themselves as a bias towards a conservative point of view. Well, if they're being upfront and honest about their bias, I appreciate that.
Right. You know, Rupert Murdoch made clear the agenda years ago in terms of Fox News' role, especially during the Obama administration, the first one, and what it was that they were going to do. The question here is, does Fox's audience recognize that, or do they believe that the source leans
Is
more
no spin?
center? That there's no exactly.
There's
yeah,
no spin.
as it
Well,
goes.
okay, so here's an idea. Now, you said that your answer is going to always be NPR, and NPR comes out right mainstream, minimal partisan bias, according to Otero.
Now, we just had a number of our conservative viewers roll their eyes at that.
Okay, and it also comes out as analytical as far as the complexity or the journalistic quality.
Yeah, it's deep.
On the why.
Or deeper than
So
basic AF.
here's an idea. What if for a couple of weeks you did not even listen to NPR? I don't know if you could do it, but if you went to a more right-leaning, which would be the Hill, which is also considered analytical, or the Fiscal Times, or the Economist, those are considered, as far as quality level, they're considered between analytical and clear up to complex. What if for 2 weeks now the National Review is still, and that's even farther to the right, it's considered partisan, but still analytical. What if you, for 2 weeks, just tried consuming a diet of complex or analytical, right-leaning bias and see what happens to your worldview or your perception of reality?
Oh, I don't think it's going to change anything in terms of my worldview or my perception.
Why? Because
of
you're
reality.
stubborn and you are not open to.
Well, I've worked long and hard to create the biases that I have.
You've got a lot invested in
A
it.
lot invested in those.
Well, okay, I get that.
So it's not going to. I'm not going to have a fundamental change. But what I might be able to do is figure out a little bit more nuance in terms of what bias might be involved. Now, I do read The Economist.
Okay.
I'll get into the Wall Street Journal from time to time as well, so it's not like I'm completely aloof for that. And then on the other side, I also balance it out with Guardian. The Atlantic and Slate, honestly, I like The Atlantic. I like their writing style.
Yeah.
Slate is a little too far left for me, and that might sound a little weird.
Even for you.
For me. But I'm able to go through maybe and understand, what's going on. NPR is easy for me because I can listen to it.
Right.
Like you listen to your books on
I
tape.
consume
I
a
listen to my
lot
news
of my
on audio.
news in my ear when
Right.
I'm doing something else.
Right.
That's really true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rather than watching it with my eyeballs or reading it. Yeah.
And then my news is also infiltrating my regular entertainment that I get from NPR on the weekends. So if I'm listening to Wait, Wait, Don't Tell Me, or This American Life, or at the top of the hour, I'm getting news breaks, going through and infiltrating my diet, in that respect as well. It's my fiber and my entertainment diet as it goes along. So I'm not willing to give that up. And I tried this weekend. I tried to actually not listen to the NPR because I've had it. I'm saturated with the contention, the conflict, and
Well, so what can you do about that to maybe feel less frustrated?
get outside and go for a hike.
Okay, all right.
Take your dog for a walk.
Okay, right. Get out in the.
I made some
clean
comfort
air.
food. I made, and pardon me, this is navel gazing as we go along, but I made some chicken and dumplings for the very first time,
Wow.
and it was extraordinary.
I bet it was.
Proud of that.
I bet it was.
Without listening to NPR.
Right. Well, let me just pitch an idea. So I was trying to coax you into considering,
Would you
altering.
do the same thing?
Yeah, well, I'm just kind of curious what I would do.
What's your diet?
Well, I think NPR and BBC are definitely, and the New York Times, and they
I was
according to
surprised to
Otero,
find both the Post and the Times as
Yeah.
censored there,
right.
especially coming from Vanessa.
So what I think I would do is just do 2 weeks, like I suggested with you, for The Hill, The Economist, The Fiscal Times, The National Review, and then 2 weeks for The Atlantic, Slate, The Guardian, and The Nation. I go to The Guardian pretty frequently already, but I would pick analytical or complex
You're
left
not going to
and
go
right
below
leaning.
that analytical line.
Well, what's the point?
Right.
I mean, what's the point?
I
Because
find it interesting that
I don't want to be stupider. I love that word.
Well,
I don't want to be less intelligent after 2 weeks and less informed than I started out being.
I'm sure she intends for NPR, BBC, the Post, the Times. CBS isn't in there, which I find to be interesting. Am I not seeing that on there anywhere?
See, it is right in the center. CBS,
There's
NBC,
NBC,
and
there's
ABC.
ABC.
CBS is just slightly to the right next to ABC News. And that's what I told my mom.
It must be not
it's,
for
it's little.
Oh, it's not on
I
cable,
told my
it's
mom,
not.
I said, why don't you stop watching cable news for a while and
Right.
just watch broadcast news? I said, I think they must have, they probably have a higher ethical standard being broadcast network news than the cable news. I'm just guessing.
Well,
But I think this kind of bears it out. a
CNN
little bit.
has displayed that over and over and over again.
Yeah.
Despite some of their key anchors that they have,
Yeah.
they're going really for that news cycle.
Yeah. For the clickbait thing, I fell for it actually the other day when I was on my video, I was watching some video, and on the right-hand column, down towards the bottom, it said Sean Spicer fired. And I thought, well, that's kind of weird, because it would be all over the news if
Yeah,
that were the case.
it
But
would
what
be.
did I do? I clicked on it just to see, and of course, there was no such thing, and it was a CNN piece of clickbait.
I still go by
Yeah.
that prediction, by the way. I don't think he's long for his job in terms of
Yeah.
what's going on. It's interesting that Vanessa has CNN down at the very bottom,
Right.
where she writes,
Down
it's better
towards-
than not reading any news at all.
Right, but down towards sensational or clickbait,
Right,
really
absolutely.
close. Yeah. Yeah. So
Which is
anyway.
too bad because
yeah.
CNN had a foothold there at some point.
They did.
CBS comes on the scene really with Edward R. Murrow, with McCarthy, the 1950s, and set a standard for television journalism. And other than Dan Rather, and it pains me to say because he's a mentor, CBS has stuck to that standard, more so perhaps than the other two in terms of the big three broadcasters. So I still have a lot of respect, I think, for that, even though I really don't go. I don't even go to their website to go through and look at news.
Well, why not?
Anymore.
I wonder.
I go to AP or Reuters if I'm looking for video clips and see what's happened before it's been digested by a network news producer to get the story. And who am I kidding? It's still being digested on some level by AP or Reuters as well.
Right.
But it doesn't go through a second set of filters by the time I see it.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the right thing here, with those for The Hill, the Fiscal Times, the Economist, Wall Street Journal,
Okay.
and the
I'll go-
National Review. I'll try that for a couple of weeks and
Okay.
just see what happens to my brain.
I'll include.
Okay.
Are you going to preclude what you normally do to do
Well,
this? Or,
I
do
mean,
you
I
really-
only have so much time
Right.
anyway to consume information.
Certainly,
like
you don't
that.
expect some kind of paradigm shift out of this, do you? You're not going to.
Well, I don't.
You're not going to
really-
go hardcore right wing.
I don't know what's going to happen.
Oh.
I'm going to leave myself open
Really?
to changing my point of view on something.
Really?
Why not? What's the point?
Well, that kind of begs the old. Well, if you don't stand for anything, you'll fall for anything.
Well, we'll see.
Which I hate that, by the way, and
Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
necessarily agree with it.
Yeah.
But
We'll see what
I could hear
happens.
people go, "Well, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything."
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Okay, and back
Wow,
to the
really?
yeah.
Do you really think you're that malleable in
I
terms
don't
of those
know.
influences that
I'm
are out
not
there?
predicting. I'm not going to set myself up with an anticipated
So
result.
let me ask you: the original producers of the show saw you and I as a yin and yang, politically coming together,
Right.
and that this show would be, we'd be constantly going
I know,
through
because
and battling
conflict
each other.
sells.
Because
Right.
and then we disappointed them.
Yes.
And probably the
By not
rest of our
fighting
audience
enough.
by not going through and,
Yes.
and tearing each other apart.
Right.
Have you come more centered, do you think, as a result of us doing this?
Ooh, I don't know. I know it's always hard, I think, to evaluate oneself. But I have to think about that a little bit. Why do you think you see
I think
a
I
shift?
have. And not only in terms of doing the show, but also in terms of researching the show. I mean, I'm to a point now where, in comparison, conservatives look pretty good to Donald Trump.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Suddenly, I'm more empathetic to a conservative position because it's still not as extreme as the president's position is. And anybody who
Interesting.
thinks Donald Trump is a Republican is up in the night. You need to go through and take a look at really what his positions are. Anybody who comes in and
It's like
starts
Bernie being a
infusing-
Democrat.
Right, it is.
Bernie Sanders is
But
not a Democrat.
Any autocrat that comes through and starts to infuse federal policy into the nation's commerce is up in the night. The whole concept of a conservative is less government, and yet, what we're seeing from Trump is he's got his fingers in every economic pie that's out there in terms of where the jobs are, in terms of the auto industry, in terms of, well, you can do America first.
Telling companies where they can do business, it doesn't really
I
smack
don't
of free
understand
market
why Republicans
to me.
aren't screaming about that.
Yeah.
They're in the true idea of conservatism. Anyway, my point being, now that I've seen a different extreme to that, it's not even Tea Party extreme. Okay, it's a fiscal extreme in a way. I'm like, well, you know what? There's some truth to those Republicans. You know, there's something to this whole idea of being the conservative fiscal or the fiscal conservative as it goes. So I don't think I would have been that considerate pre-election,
Okay.
if that makes any sense.
Why? Because partly you felt like you had to support a cause or a point of view, and so it didn't
Certainly
give
a
you
point of view.
some freedom around considering a different point of view or looking at.
Yeah, honestly, if it came from a Republican source, I wouldn't listen to it.
Okay. Okay. Well.
Or I would listen with obviously a very hypercritical ear.
Okay.
But now, like Kasich really is the one who turned the corner for me on that one. And even though he ran as a Republican candidate for president, he had the ability to be more progressive in terms of expressing his position on certain political ideals. And I thought, well, here's the Republican ticket right there. It's got to be John Kasich as he comes around. But he did not resonate with those who were on the fringe, feeling on the Democratic fringe, who felt that the Democratic Party had completely let them down. And that was the party that, in key states to go through, Michigan and Wisconsin and Nebraska, to go through and turn around the whole electoral college.
I have to say, I heard him speak. I went over to the Dixie Center when he was
Right,
here
he was here,
campaigning,
right.
and I wasn't thrilled.
He's not dynamic.
He's not
a little
dynamic.
on the milquetoast,
he
pansy
seemed
side of things.
so canned to me
Yep.
and so scripted.
But did you read him? Did you look into his?
Well, I was probably
Platform,
about
did
40
you?
feet away. Oh, look into his eyes?
No.
Look into his platform?
Look
40
into his
feet.
platform. Not what he was standing on.
Yeah. He ended up being my choice during the
Oh,
primaries.
so you voted for him during the primaries.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. But so I want to ask you, speaking of elected officials and voting and expressing your point of view, back to your frustration and your discouragement level, and my neighbor who was just beside himself about the Democrats being difficult. I told my brother, I said, I'm going to write to all 5 of our Utah congressional representatives, even though I only get to vote for 3 out of the 5, because the other ones, well, let's see, there's more than 5. We have 4 in the House now, right?
Right.
So there's 6. So I only get to vote for 3 out of the 6. The other people in the House are not in my
Right.
district. However, I still feel like because they're representing Utah, they represent me as a Utah resident. So I am going to write to them and I'm going to express my concerns about health care and about immigration specifically, probably 2 separate letters. And I want to write to them enough and communicate with them enough that I sort of show up on the radar somewhere as a voter.
As a voter.
And of course, I did not do it last weekend.
Okay.
I did something else.
Okay.
This weekend, I'm going to do my taxes. But before February's over, I'm going to promise you that I am going to write one of the 2 letters. It'll either be on immigration or it'll be
So you're going to
on.
do this snail mail, or you're going to do it email?
I'm going to send it as an email, and then I think I will follow up with phone calls. I have a goal in my two senators and Chris Stewart as a representative to get to know the names of some of the people that answer the phones.
Chris Stewart had a town hall meeting here last night. Did you
By
happen to attend
way of Skype.
Oh, it was
a Skype
okay.
call.
All right.
And I was tempted to go because I think it was specifically on healthcare.
Had to do with ACA.
Healthcare, and I did not go to that. So.
And I didn't either.
Yeah.
In full disclosure.
So, but yes.
I think what you're doing is commendable. We all need to be doing that on some level. I've done that electronically to go through and get my concerns out there.
Yeah.
There's an interesting analysis in terms of, well, then what do senators and Congress people really respond to in terms of what they're getting from their constituents, what really gets their attention. And what I got from the analyses that I read was the main thing that gets their attention is when they are going to or leaving their offices and what might be happening outside their doors, more so perhaps than the flood of emails or the polls. Phone calls get attention and snail mail gets the attention. Okay, but anything that can be dismissed through an electronic channel doesn't really.
Okay.
Not that it doesn't count, because I don't want to go through and discourage anybody from not actually, making some kind of difference that way. But what counts more is the pen on paper and the voice in the hallway.
Well, and I feel like I can call up the office and talk to the interns answering the phone and say, what's the best way to communicate? How do you guys track what comes in by way of email or by way of phone calls or by way of hard copy letters? And there's no reason why you can't send a hard copy of the same letter that you send by email, right? So I do think you make a point that, and each office is different. Each elected representative has the way they do business and the way they run their offices.
And to work the local offices as much as you might work the state offices
yes,
as well.
because those are the field offices and those are where the constituents issues. And so, I know Betty Ariel is in one of the offices down here. I think she's Mike Lee's office.
She's Mike Lee's office. Then.
Right, and so to get to know the people locally that run their field offices, I think it's a goal for me to take some of the angst and frustration that I'm dealing with and channel it instead of torturing the people I love by constantly fulminating.
Or fulminating, as the case might be.
Yes, fomenting.
But you're not a fulminator.
I am
you're
not
on
a
Facebook. You're not in social media. There, I don't see.
But I can get kind of wound up and fulminate for at least a few minutes.
I'm fascinated that people in your neighborhood feel that you are on some level, at least you're listening to them, but you're also maybe kind of an opinion shaper.
Oh, I don't know about that. I was more like listening to my neighbor. And the reason I was talking to my neighbor, let's see, we have 2 minutes left, but I'm a precinct officer.
Oh, you are?
For our voting precinct.
That's right.
And so I'm going to go around.
For your Republican voting precinct.
Yes. So we are going to get some information out to the voters, and I was asking for his help. So that's how I came to be talking to him.
I want to clarify that I think, regardless of our party, we shouldn't back off. There's this idea that, well, he's president, you shouldn't be doing anything, you should accept the fact that he's president and you should go through. The actions and then the subsequent firing of Sally Yates, I think, speaks to what we owe the democracy in terms of standing up for what is right and fighting for that and taking your chances in doing so.
I'd say, I guess she made a decision to get fired, most likely.
Well,
she knew what she was.
I'm sure that was on the table by the time she made that decision.
Yeah, so we don't have an official attorney general right now.
She was acting AG appointed by the Democrats to begin with.
Right, so
but
we're waiting to get a new one. Yeah.
Tenacity and what she was able to do with her prowess as an attorney, as somebody who knows the Constitution with what's happening.
Well, when we come next week, let's talk a little bit more about the trolls, because I want to do a little reader's theater with you if we can find something we think is engaging.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Let's see what we can put together for that. Join us next week, Talking Point Live at 9 o'clock, coming to you live on Wednesday. We hope you have a great week. Keep fighting the fight. We'll see you in 7 days.
That's right.
Right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Thanks.